Hi, I'm Nicholas Gerbis with American Scientist Magazine. We're less than 6 weeks away from the 2026 FIFA World Cup, where all eyes will be on the object of a 70 centimeter sphere roaming around football stadiums in Canada, Mexico, and the US. That ball has been the subject of substantial research by our guest, John Eric Goff, a physicist at the University of Puget Sound in Tacoma, Washington. He works at the intersection of applied mechanics, aerodynamics, and sports engineering, and he's known for his analyses of Tour de France performances, as well as being in his 20th year of studying the engineering and fluid dynamics of footballs or soccer balls for our American audience. Welcome, Dr. Goff.
Wonderful to be here. Happy to talk about what's coming up in 42 days.
It's going to be here quick. How did all this start for you? How did you get into analyzing these balls?
So I was at then Lynchburg College in 2005, and I had a student, Brandon Cook, who wanted to do a project modeling the flight of a soccer ball in my computational physics course. We looked at some interesting things that came out of that. And at that time, analytics in soccer was nothing like what it is now, and certainly nothing like what it is in sports like baseball. And we ended up submitting a paper to, actually, it was the American Journal of Physics first who rejected our paper. And the referee comment that I now keep on my door is I don't think this would be of use to those except for, maybe a niche in soccer. So we sent this to European Journal of Physics, and it was quickly accepted. Became one of the most downloaded papers of the year. It was a hallmark in my career because it got me into all kinds of interactions with sports engineers around the world. And it was published right before the 2006 World Cup in Germany. So that's what really got the ball rolling. And then I had a good collaborative team in Japan at the University of Tsukuba, led by Takeshi Asai. And we've been doing the aerodynamic testing for the balls that Adidas puts out for the World Cup ever since.
So, how does one study a World Cup football? Like, what physically do you do? Do you take it apart, crush it, blow it up, have a robotic Cristiano Ronaldo kick it?
So my colleagues in Japan have a lovely wind tunnel, and they take this ball like this Trianda that I'm holding here, and they will open up a part in the back and stick in a metal sting, as it's called, a metal rod, and then have air blow over top of this ball in a non-spinning configuration, and we'll look at the forces on the ball. And primarily the main force is going to be the drag force. This is the force you feel when you stick your hand out the window of a moving car and you feel the air pushing you back. But it also has some lateral forces as well, based on the air that separates off the ball not being perfectly symmetric off the back. And it'll have some little wiggles that people will see with knuckleballs. And then they measure these forces. They will send me the data. I do all the data analysis, the physics, trajectory modeling, and other analyses that we do associated with the roughness of the ball. But that's the collaborative team that I work with right now.
And are they getting that data from the vibration and the sting or from the dust studies like you've done elsewhere?
So there are these load cells that are put into the apparatus that will detect the size of the force. So if the wind's pushing on the ball in one direction, the sting feels that, and then there's a load cell in there that will detect the size of that force, and all this gets in, to the computer that's recording the size of these forces versus time that's being applied for the wind.
Do you is it possible to use the same orientation for each ball? Is there a way to have a coordinate system or does it matter?
No, in fact, we test different orientations of the ball. We usually publish two of the several that we test. But when you turn the ball in one orientation, you may have a place where the seams will come together and the panels come together like so. Or maybe we test it in an orientation where maybe the wind is hitting more of a flatter part of the ball. Different orientations lead to slightly different aerodynamic properties. So we put an entire kind of like an aerodynamic fingerprint together for the ball based on its roughness and the various orientations to compare them across different orientations. There's not really a way that I can take, if I grab the Aurela that was used 4 years ago in Cutter, this ball has 20 panels. The current ball has the lowest number ever of 4 panels, and there's no way I can find an exact replica, one orientation on one ball compared to the other. So we test several orientations and look at the way in which the drag coefficients and other aerodynamic properties change as the orientation changes to come up with, as I say, kind of an aerodynamic fingerprint for each ball.
You mentioned the seams and the panels. Can you talk a bit about what factors affect the aerodynamics of the ball?
So one of the things that I learned very early on is that the ball's roughness, it plays a major part in its aerodynamics. The airflow around the ball, when the ball is going to my left in what I'm showing here with my hand, if the air is coming at it like this, the separation off the ball at the top and the sides takes place at a certain, let's say, angle off from the front of the ball. The roughness can influence where that separation takes place. There's a nice transition that happens as the wind speed in the wind tunnel increases, where you pass from what's called a laminar separation of this boundary layer of air off the back of the ball to what's called a turbulent boundary layer separation. And at that moment, the drag coefficient, or the drag on the ball, at least for that narrow region, will drop precipitously. And then, of course, it's going back up again as the ball moves faster and faster. But the point at which that transition takes place happens to be roughly close to where a lot of the game of soccer is played, but you want it at the lower speed. So the simple passes that are taking place, you don't really want that to happen when you have these big free kicks and the long corner kicks and things like that in soccer, where you get pretty good scoring opportunities. That roughness can influence where that transition takes place.
So, one sort of famous or infamous example of those free kick speeds affecting the drag coefficient, the drag crisis, that was the Jabulani ball, correct? How does that compare with the Trionda this year?
So when we look at the evolution of these balls, I mean, Adidas has had the contract since 1970. The 32 panel, the hexagons and pentagons, the black and white that we're maybe seeing when we were playing with these things as kids, that technology disappeared in 2002 with the Fevernova ball that was used in Japan and South Korea. The 32 panels haven't been used in the World Cup since then. When 2006 rolled around and the Team Geist ball was used in Germany, the panel number went to 14. In 2010, the infamous Jahalani ball that was used in South Africa, the panel number went to 8. And the risk you run of keeping the panel number smaller and smaller is that the ball becomes too smooth. There simply aren't the number of seam locations on the ball when the panel number goes down. And the problem with Javelani is it was too smooth. So that transition that I was talking about before, where this, as the ball would slow down and the turbulent boundary layer separation would actually transition to a laminar boundary layer transition or separation, was happening in the middle of these speeds for free kicks and corner kicks, so that the goalkeepers were seeing the ball slow rather quickly during flight. It would also have more wobbling effects, had more instabilities associated with the low spin kicks. So these types of things were corrected in subsequent balls. The Trionda has 4 panels, and if you think, well, now you're really running the risk of the ball being too smooth. I mean, it has a lot of microtexturing on it. It has these deep grooves, 3 deep grooves on these panels, in addition to the seam that's going around the ball. The seam takes a rather circuitous route going around the ball. So the ball itself, you almost need a degree in topology to start putting these panels together and getting the understanding of how you could make something with only 4 panels create a sphere, or at least a very good approximation to a sphere.
So for the other balls, when the sudden drag switchover happens at lower speeds, what do the players experience? Is it just that the kick doesn't go quite as far as they might expect, or
So, like with Jabalani, you'd see a free kick. Kazuka Honda was a famous one against Ecuador, Japan playing Ecuador, where the ball was kicked with very little spin. The goalkeeper starts moving in the direction of the kick, and then the ball is literally going through this transition where the turbulent separation is becoming laminar, the drag coefficient's going up precipitously, and the ball slows more than would be expected for a ball kick like this. And when it starts to slow like that, the perception that it's dropping quickly is happening because it's obviously slowing down. It's taking longer to get to the goal. And the goalkeeper was quite a bit above the ball when it was going into the net. He was, really missed timed where the ball was going to be. So that's what can happen if you put this right in the middle of the popular speed range for these kicks.
yeah, there are some lovely photos from that particular Honda kick that really illustrate the just from the where everyone's eyes are looking, where they expect the ball as opposed to where the
That's
ball
right.
is. It is I don't know if this is a fair question, but of all the FIFA balls that you have studied, was one of them constructed the best? Is that a term we can use?
I think now we're getting into subjectivity because there's no reason why you could say that the Jabalani is a bad ball if what you want to happen is that type of a slowdown during a free kick or during a corner kick. You have to ask the players, probably first the fans down the line, but what do people want to see? Do they want the ball to move as fast as possible? Do they want the ball to be as controlled as possible by the players when they kick it? These are types of questions that are asked that the manufacturer has to listen to and say, okay, now I have to engineer and design a ball that's going to respect what the wishes of the fans and the players especially are. So I don't think there's really a best ball. The ball that I really liked that was the one that replaced the Jabalani ball was the 2014 ball that was used in Brazil. That was the Brazuca. So this had 6 panels, and the surface, despite having 2 fewer panels than Jabalani had, it was much rougher to feel than Jabalani was. It had a 68% longer actual total seam length compared to Jabalani, despite the 2 fewer panels, because of the circuitous route the seam took around these interesting shaped panels. So it was a much better ball, in my opinion. It did not have this so-called drag crisis where this transition occurs. It did not have it right in the middle of these free kick speeds and these corner kick speeds. So the players, I think, had a little less to complain about with that ball. But of course, they have to be the ones to kick it. So how it feels on the boot, what kind of control they feel like they have when they're dribbling, the ease in which they can impart spin on the ball if they're looking for one of these nice banana kicks, these bend it like Beckham kicks. All of these things are going to play a role in the kind of player reaction to a ball.
No, we've all been in airplanes. We all have a bad association with the word turbulence. Why is it that on a football, switching over to a turbulent state from laminar state is actually decreasing drag and is actually maybe something you want?
So it turns out when you do pass this transition, the so-called drag coefficient, this is a parameter that doesn't have any units, and it multiplies things like the ball's cross-sectional area and its speed squared and the air density. But it multiplies these factors, and it contains essentially all the fun stuff. The effects of the roughness of the ball and the seams and the textures and all that stuff is contained in that drag coefficient. So if you are past this drag crisis and you're at higher enough speeds where the separation is turbulent, that drag coefficient is fairly steady. So the ball behaves in much more predictable ways than it would if the kick had to go through this drag crisis where the drag coefficient rises precipitously. So it's not that the full drag force goes down a lot, it's that the drag coefficient's going down a lot. But that, for a given speed, means that the high speed kicks of a ball like this Trianda, where the drag crisis is quite low compared to Javelani, its high speed behavior should be fairly consistent for the players.
Thank you. Thinking in terms of this sphere moving through the air, and knowing that this year it's going to be held in Canada, Mexico, and the U.S., and thinking about uh, Mexico City being at such a high elevation, uh, how important are things like air pressure or humidity uh, conditions? Might there be any advantage at certain in one country over another in terms of how the ball performs? Do you think?
Well, certainly if a group of players is coming from a region where they play a lot of matches at high elevation, playing where there is high elevation, like a Mexico City or something, where you've got uh, a lot of elevation, that might actually be to their advantage. If you look back at that South Africa World Cup, the final that was between Spain and Netherlands, the Spanish club that was just masterclass in passing and the way in which they handled the ball probably had a bit of an advantage because the Dutch team had played a lot more at elevation than the Spaniard team had. So when they played the final at more closer to sea level, I mean, I think that could have had an effect. I mean, who knows? But the issues like with humidity, when you add humidity to the air, the drag force goes down. That's why baseballs fly farther in the summer. Uh, you actually replace some atoms with H2O molecules that are a little bit lighter. And we think of these like ideal gases and stuff. So the air density is a little bit smaller when you have this humidity rising in the summer. And the balls have been engineered now with these thermally bonded panels. So you don't see there's no more stitching in these things like they used to have back 2002 and before. The thermal bonding is really good about keeping moisture out of the ball. So when the players are heading the ball, unlike a whole generation or so back, they're not picking up a lot of extra mass during the course of play. I mean, even if it's not raining, if there's moisture on the pitch and the ball is rolling around, it can pick up some moisture that way. As far as the pressure goes, I think the balls are pretty well pressurized before they're sent out to play at any given location. So they're not going to change much during the course of the game. And they're constantly being rotated in and out. I mean, you'll see a ball go out, kicked out of bounds, and then another ball will be thrown to a player before it's thrown in. So, I mean, these balls are constantly being brought in and out of the match.
And the teams get access to the new balls in advance of the tournament, I believe. Is that correct? Like a few months or?
Yeah, that's my understanding. They get a couple months to play with the ball. There's an interesting thing going on in the Premier League right now over in England because the new ball that's being used in the Premier League is this Puma, the ball from Puma, and it's this Orbita ball that uh, it's easier to grip by hand. It has a little bit higher little surface patterns than the ball that was used last season, which was the Nike Flight ball. This ball is a little harder to grip, but with the hand, but it contains these grooves in it, very similar to the grooves that we see
Huh.
in Trianda. And the aerodynamic profile of this Nike Flight ball that was used a season ago in the Premier League is very similar to the Trianda ball. So it will be interesting to see if players who've used the Nike Flight and been comfortable with that ball will find the Trianda to be a very similar feel. Uh, the newer ball, the ball from Puma, doesn't have quite the same aerodynamic profile. They're not vastly different, of course, but they're a little bit different. And I think players at the elite level might notice a slight change like that.
This is slightly off topic, but since you brought up Puma, weren't there two brothers, one who founded Adidas and one who founded Puma? Or am I getting that mixed up? Okay.
I don't know quite the backstory of all
It's,
the founding of the
yeah.
companies, but
So Adidas or Adidas, as I would probably say incorrectly, it is a Greek name.
I
So
think more of the Europeans will say Adidas and the Americans will say Adidas. So whether it's football or soccer, whatever side of the Atlantic we're on.
So they make a new ball for each tournament, each World Cup, both men's and women's, right?
That's right.
And do they basically use the same design but with a different paint job between the men's and women's?
So the 2022 ball that I was holding up here a second ago, this is the Aurela that was used in Qatar in 2022. It has the same exact look as the Oceans ball that was used in 2023 in Australia, New Zealand for the Women's World Cup. It's just that the color scheme was different, the name of the ball was different, but the actual like surface features of the ball, the panels and all that's the same. So from, the men's one year, the women's the next year, the ball is the same, but the labeling and the paint color and all that part changes.
Now, how early do you get access to the ball so that hopefully you have enough time to do your study before the World Cup happens?
So we do not work for Adidas. We do not work for FIFA. We do independent testing of these balls. Whenever they're released to the public, we can, of course, go out and purchase them and buy them. I have had Adidas send me balls before. I will usually send a paper or something that we publish to them, but we don't have any kind of professional agreement on the testing or anything like that. That testing that they do is proprietary. They're not releasing, their studies on these balls. But the testing that we had done on the Trianda ball happened last fall when the ball was released. And there is a reason these things come out with a brand new shape and name and color scheme and all that every 4 years. Is this was about $170 this new World Cup ball. So, Adidas makes quite a lot of money on these balls.
And yeah, I bet they do. I was joking earlier about a robotic player, but some of our listeners and readers have asked, would it be useful to you to work with someone who could, I don't know, demonstrate some of the effects of different kicking styles? Is there anyone who would be a dream player or even someone else in the sport that would be interesting to involve in your research?
Well, I mean, probably the biggest star on the U.S. team, Christian Pulisic. I mean, that might be somebody, who's a kind of the marquee attacking player for the U.S. team. I mean, that would be a fun player to have kick the ball. Here at Puget Sound, we've had some of the women's players and men's players both kicking all of these and giving us some feedback on those. Even though the Trianda shows a little bit larger drag coefficient for high speed kicks than the balls that preceded it, which might suggest if it's kicked without much spin, there'll be a slight loss in range. But the grooves allow possibly for the boot to get in there and impart a little bit more backspin so that they can get a little help from the lovely Magnus effect and get a little bit more lift on the ball. So we'll have to see if that trade-off does happen. Some of the players that kicked it here at Puget Sound noticed, at least they thought, and again, anecdotally, that they could grip this Trianda ball a little bit better than say Aurela.
When we were talking before, you had mentioned some of the ways we're seeing just the sport itself evolve. Some of the monitoring, the chip in the ball. Are you comfortable chatting a little bit about that
Sure,
stuff?
yeah.
Or okay. So what kind of advancements have you seen over the years, either in the ball or in the way the game is refereed or umpired? Do they have refs? I guess they're umpires.
I think the referee is the term, but
Okay.
the IMU, the inertial measurement unit that's in this ball, emits at 500 hertz. So 500 times a second, meaning within like a 2 millisecond grain of interval of time, it's sending out data. There are 12 cameras around the stadia that are being used in the World Cup that are recording at 50 hertz, so 50 times a second. And they're looking at 29 points on each player's body, the 22 players on the pitch. All of this data is being recorded by these very fast computers that are up in a bank that are going to be helping with the video assisted referee for the refereeing of the matches. As soon as this ball is whacked with the boot, there's a signal set out that says, wait, the ball experienced a large acceleration. That means it's been kicked. And there's a timestamp that's now associated with that kick. The players around the stadium that have been recorded in this 50 hertz recording, they're now located in that timestamp, and a 3D rendering, like an avatar of each player, is made. And if you're putting them up on a line to determine for offsides, you can actually see, does the AI helped rendering of the player get the knee just over the line or the elbow just over the line? What is, you don't want to get parts of the body that aren't allowed to touch the ball. They don't count as far as the offsides. But I mean, is there a part of the hip or the knee or like a shoulder? There's something that's past the line where you can say with definitively, yes, this player's offsides. And the systems are going to be much faster than the traditional VAR systems. You should, within half a minute, really just be able to get on the board a 3D rendering for the fans to see in the stadium, that the fans at home can actually see this. And hopefully, I mean, there have been a few problems with these things, as there always will be with new technology. But hopefully the technology works well, and that the offsides calls and goal line calls and things like that can be done quickly without too much stoppage time.
How does that information get conveyed to the officials? Is it only through challenges? Are there challenges in football?
So this becomes in a sense, it's tracking live, and there's this so-called like sensor fusion alert. This SOAT system is this semi-automated offsides technology. So what'll happen is you have this impact. The fusion alert sends this out. It's telling the referees, the system is telling the referees, we're going to check this thing computationally. The VAR review is doing this kick point and offsides line and all this. And it's an automated alert system. So they're being alerted to this. The referee decision is, they're confirming it. So they're going to see the images and stuff. They're going to confirm this thing, and hopefully they can keep this thing to within about a half a minute, whereas in the past it might have been a minute and a half. I mean, that's the goal with these newer technologies, to be able to not pause the game too long. So if there's a kick that's taking place and there's an offsides, hopefully the referees are going to be alerted to the fact that, wait a minute, we're going to have to hold off here a second. We're going to check this real quick. It looks like somebody was offsides. Now, you'd like to think the referee would call it, but sometimes whatever you're talking about, someone's patella, their kneecap is just past the line, you can't blame a human being for not really being able to make that kind of decision, and not even being in the right location to see exactly that kneecap coming over some imagined line through there.
Now, we're talking in terms of the forces on these balls, it seems like the scale is fairly small. Is having this sensor chip in the ball able to affect that in any way, negatively or positively?
Affect what?
I guess not the airflow of the ball, but like the mass of the ball, perhaps, or the way the ball's constructed.
Well, the IMU itself, it's only a few grams, and it's embedded in one of the panels. But you can then, Adidas can put mass in other panels and other locations to still try to keep the center of mass at the center point of the ball, the geometric center of the ball. So you certainly would not want a little bit of mass offset from the side that would create little wobbles and things like that in the trajectory. So all you have to do is put some counterbalancing mass in the other panels to try to keep the center mass at the geometric center of the ball.
Thank you so much for chatting with us today, John Eric Goff. I'd be remiss if I didn't ask, who are you pulling for in the 2026 World Cup?
Well, I'm certainly pulling for my home country, the U.S. I've got a lot of colleagues over in England, and I, root for the Three Lions when I can. It'd be just interesting to see how the teams respond when they're over here. Obviously there's a lot of political unrest right now. I mean, one of the countries that did qualify was Iran, and it's going to be interesting to see if they'll be over here. So it's just, obviously I think my home country would be first and foremost who I'm pulling for. But I have got colleagues overseas and other countries that keep an eye on how their teams are performing as well.
Yeah, including your fellow researchers in Japan, I'm sure.
Yeah, I mean, it's fun to have these colleagues everywhere, because now all of a sudden you start paying attention to football or soccer in different parts of the world, and keep an eye on the Premier League and all these other things where you've got friends and colleagues who are diehard fans. And I will say that when I will add one more comment.
Mm-hmm.
So I had my former university in Virginia had kind of imploded, and I had this lovely opportunity to be at a third sabbatical year in England. And when I had to find a new place to work, the University of Puget Sound was a fun place to spend a year. But I'm going to be permanently employed at Purdue University, and helping them to grow and establish their sports engineering program there. So I would be more than tickled if any of your listeners who are thinking, how can I use physics or engineering to make a career out of that, give us a look at Purdue.
Boiler up, right?
I believe that's what's said there, yes.
I'm a Hoosier. I grew up in Indiana, so.
And my degree is from Indiana as well, so it's not about the sports teams; it's about the sports engineering. And
well played.
I will be a very strong advocate for a very high quality program there in engineering.